Hello, good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to Connect Africa. So our bi-weekly discussion here with Kwame. We bring here topical issues in Africa that impacts the African citizens at home and abroad. So for today, we are going to continue from what we did last week on Thursday regarding the Vice President Kamala Harris visit to the US. Kwame is with us here every Tuesday and Thursday. So he is here to continue that discussion. We did analyze on Ghana, and now we do for the rest of the two countries that she did, Tanzania and Zambia. Once again, welcome, Kwame.
Thank you so much, Malet. Thank you for having me once again and sharing with me this platform, this important platform, Connect Africa. So I want to also thank the people who are watching, the new people who are watching the channel. I would like to encourage them to subscribe to the channel and also to support the work which we are doing. Like we have repeatedly mentioned, we are here doing a Pan-African work. We are not doing work for fantasy or just to get views or to get likes simply, but rather we are trying to contribute to our continent. We are trying to put our block. If it is a building, we are putting our block on the building, on the foundation which was started by our ancestors. And so that is what Mallet mentioned, that we are here to analyze various geopolitical issues and how they affect our continent. And today we are seeing a lot of events unfolding, rapidly. We have seen China, we have seen the Western world, how it has been moving and how it is insisting that it is supposed to be in Africa. And we have seen the Western diplomats, of course, frequenting the African continent, where even to some, extent, or in some cases, we Africans have seen it as, some sort of nagging. It has become a nagging affair, on their part, in our eyes, that we sometimes we feel that we are tired of these visits, but they keep coming. And so we have decided to look into it and see what is the need for us, and what do they exactly want from Africa? What do they want from the African continent? What do they want from us, the Africans? And so
Mhm.
these are the issues which we are here to discuss. But on top of that, also, aside just discussing, we are involved in groundwork. We are carrying out work like, pushing petitions on the ground. And these petitions, like we say, they are backed by the PLO Lumumba Foundation. They are backed by Dr. Susan. They are backed by Dr. Edmund Folfak from Ohio, State University, who is a renowned cancer doctor. So these petitions are for pushing the unification of Africa, uh, the forming of a single military, the forming of a single currency and a single passport. And there is a lot of other organizations which are moving in this direction, like Africans Rising is one of the organizations which are working in that direction. There's a lot of other organizations which, of course, also need support, like the Uhuru movement, which is pushing the Pan-African, agenda within the United States, the Pan-African, struggle, within the United States for the Africans, in the United States. It is the one which is leading on the other side. So on this side of the continent, also, we are pushing from our side. So we ask for your support in this regard. Sign the petitions, reach out to Mallet, contribute, reach out to us. The email is always in the description. Write to us and contribute whatever you can contribute, $2, $5, $10. anything, even if it's euros or pounds, whatever it is, contribute to this work, so that we can also be energized to fight for our continent. Yeah, so over to you, Mallet. Thank you very much for bearing with me and these long greetings which I've given our viewers. Thank you very much.
Indeed, it's important, yeah, to remind our viewers what we are doing beside live streaming on the ground, as you said, and also petitions that they need to be signed, and also that it's a platform definitely that we do it like no other does it. It's a Pan African platform, and we do this. We analyze things. We look at things unapologetically because our interest is the one and the only Pan Africanism. So, as long as it fulfills that, we bring it to you. Now, without further ado, going to our question for today, or our discussion rather. Kamala Harris, I mean, you gave us a very good analysis from the opening speech right after when she stepped in Accra until she left. So, for those of you who are interested, please go see our video, what we did, the part one last Thursday on 30th March. Now, uh, her visit in Tanzania and Zambia, in general, the Foreign Policy for Africa Department of the U.S. Says that this is one of the highest official visits by Biden administration, given that she's the vice president. To counter, actually, they say it blatantly, to counter the China and Russia influence in the continent. That's how the foreign policy calls it. So the main objectives are listed as I mean, the agenda for her while she visits the continent is economic development, climate change, food security, and the rising youth population in the continent. However, we have seen that none of her speech or visits in Ghana didn't really go to that direction. It was just empty promises that doesn't really that we cannot put on a scale. Now, for her Tanzania and Zambia, should we expect anything different? How do you analyze her visit in Zambia and Tanzania? And as a foreign policy puts it, is US really able to counter the influence, the huge influence, the big business partner, the development partner in the continent, the China and Russia influence in the continent? Over to you, Kwame.
Thank you very much, Mallet. I hope you can hear me very well.
Yes, loud and clear. We hear you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So, like we said, Kamala Harris's visit to Africa, where she's, finished the visit, the tour. I think they called it a tour of three African countries: Ghana, Tanzania, and uh, Zambia. Is very important that we analyze it within the context of uh, the continuation of the US Africa Summit, which happened last year in November in Washington, in the United States, where the United States attempted to treat the African heads of state with some sort of dignity. It tried to copy what China has done in the past. If you go and ask the African diplomats about how they are treated by Beijing and how they are treated by Washington, you will see that of course, there is a huge gap in the treatment of Africans. I'm talking about African diplomats. There's a huge gap in the difference of, when it comes to treatment that Beijing, regardless of how small the country is, whether it is Togo or Benin, it is, their diplomats, whether it is the prime minister who has gone to Beijing, is treated, with all the respect. Unlike the United States, that when African diplomats go to the United States, they are normally disregarded. They are given the lower ranking, people who are working in the White House, for example, to welcome them, even presidents, which is different from what used to happen in the 60s. For example, if you go back to the 60s, when people like President Kwame Nkrumah used to go to the United States, he would be welcomed directly by President John F. Kennedy, JF Kennedy himself. He would come to the airport and welcome, President Kwame Nkrumah. He would not send even his vice president. So when Haile Selassie was visiting the United States, President Kennedy himself would come to the airport, to pay, him respect. So it shows you how much regard they had. So during this summit, which happened in November, the U.S. Africa, Leaders Summit that happened in the United States in November 2022, they attempted to replicate the respect and the dignity and the fair treatment. They tried to put up a show, to copy what China has been doing. And so that visit by Kamala Harris, in the past, 2 weeks, where she has been, to Africa, like we said, in Nigeria, I mean, in Ghana, Tanzania, and Zambia, is a follow up to that. But what were they trying to achieve? What are they trying to achieve in all this? What they are trying to achieve, of course, is the continuation of the exploitation of African resources. And let me zoom in a little bit on Ghana. When you look at countries like Ghana, for example, why they focused on it is because Ghana has a lot of investments from the United States. It has a lot of corporations. I will not call it investments, because those investments are not reflected, in the lives of the people, but rather when they come to invest, they share the goods with the middle class and the ruling class, and leave the majority of the people, wallowing in poverty. So they have a lot of investments in Ghana, and that is one of the reasons. They have a military base in Ghana, and they are trying also to expand that on that military base in Ghana. And one of the major items to which a commitment was made, for example, in Ghana, it was the military defense. They claim that they are trying to protect Ghana from terrorists, attacks, and the terrorist attacks which may come, insurgents, Islamic militants, and all that kind of thing. So she said that she committed $100 million, between Ghana, Benin, Guinea, and Ivory Coast, to share the $100 million.
And Togo as well.
Yes, yes, yes. I think, and Togo, yes, Togo, Ivory Coast, Ghana, and Guinea. Yeah, so that is what she did, and they have a lot of investments. Of course, they have. They are the ones who control the cocoa in the country. They are the ones who control the gold in the country. They are the ones who control the oil in the country, Ghana. So the major industries in the country, they control it. They control, it. The major exports of the country, the Western world is the one which controls the financial sector. Also, the European countries and the Western world, they are the ones who control, the industry in the country. All these major industries. The Ghanaians, I remember there's one of the richest men in Ghana was complaining that uh, the African people in Ghana, they don't control anything in the country. They don't control either the mines. They don't control the telecom companies. They don't control the financial sector. They don't control anything. Everything is owned by foreigners. And that gentleman is called Sam Jonah. Is one of the richest people actually in Ghana. And he was lamenting, last year about the happenings, in the country, the way things are going in the country. and he was not satisfied. Now, when we go to Tanzania, if you remember 2020, before the death of, or I may say the assassination of President John Pombe Magufuli, Tanzania was growing, and the reason why Tanzania was growing is because Tanzania had gone to take back the mines from these Western countries which have been exploiting them. We are talking about gold and all the other resources, tourism. President Pombe John Magufuli took back control of these resources into the hands of the public and the Tanzanians, and he closed off the country and started building it rapidly. And during this period when COVID was happening, actually it is within this period that Tanzania attained the middle income status while all the other economies were suffering. So we see that Tanzania was in during the COVID period was in the midst of economic boom, because construction was going on of roads. They were constructing a 2,000 mega dam, megawatts dam. They were constructing hospitals, more than 100 hospitals. They were constructing a lot of infrastructure in the country. Okay, the railway line, the electric railway line which he started. They were, rehabilitating their airport, and he installed, replaced the Tanzania Airways. He bought 7, aircraft. So Tanzania was booming. There was a lot of money in the country during President John Pombe Magufuli's time. So the Western world feels like with the installment or the installation of this woman, Samia Suluhu, who is currently the president and was the vice president during John Pombe Magufuli's time, with her coming to power, they saw an opportunity that this is somebody who's lenient, and will be able to allow them to come back and do whatever they want in the country, which President John Pombe Magufuli was not allowing them to do. And we have seen this actually in the way she behaved when Kamala Harris was in Tanzania. That Kamala Harris, as she was patronizing her, she was just saying, yes, madam, yes, madam. We see how you have, she was saying things like, we see how you have deepened democracy in the country, and President Suluhu was saying, yes, madam, yes, yes, thank you, and stuff like that. And to some extent, she was acting submissive, that many of the Africans actually around the continent have not felt good, with this kind of attitude that President Suluhu, Samia of Tanzania, put up when Kamala Harris, visited Tanzania. And so she continued to push, her, of course, empty narrative, her ambiguous statements like development, human emancipation, innovation, but which are not clear. They are not backed by any substantial results or infrastructure, which, anything which says that we are going to help you to build roads here, we're going to help you build a dam, we are going to help you build maybe 100 hospitals or 20 hospitals, we're going to help you build this. No, there's nothing like that, but rather these ambiguous terms, we are going to come and help you, to have sustainable development, sustainable, human rights, all these ambiguous terms which don't mean anything in the eyes of Africans. So this is what we have continued to see even in Tanzania. And when you look at what they committed funds to, when you go to Tanzania, is the same ambiguous, items like the United States will help you to deepen democracy. But what they do in this is that they bring organizations like USAID and other American organizations. They are the ones driving this money. They are the ones who are given this money, but they say that they have given it to Africa. And we have addressed this on numerous times. And when you go to Ghana, for example, they committed around they committed around $139 million. In Tanzania, because they are seeing how rapidly the country is growing, they committed, I think, up to $400 million, something like that. But it is all in the air. It is all in the air. You cannot see that it has been committed to such and such a project. So what we can say is that it is empty promises. It is empty promises that are not backed by any tangible, results or any tangible project that we are going to talk about. This is a project. This is a serious project. These people are helping us to do, like how you can talk of that President Magufuli in his 5 years, he put back the Tanzania Airways and he bought 7 aircraft out of Tanzania's own money. You can say that President John Pombe Magufuli built a 2,000 megawatt dam in the country. So these are the projects. This is what we Africans we can do for ourselves, or if we have a serious partners who sometimes we have found to be China, who's some sort of a serious partner when it comes to doing business in Africa. So it is the same thing that happened in Tanzania, that the promises that were made in Ghana, they are the same promises that were made in Tanzania, but they are not backed by any substantial evidence that things are going to be delivered. And what worries me as an African actually is that we have not stood strong enough to hold these people accountable. That is the only thing also which worries me on the other side, that we have also to learn to to hold these people when they make these promises accountable, because today we have the information. Okay, things are, when speeches are made, they are being recorded. So let us wait for 2-3 years and hold them accountable. Let us hold people like Obama, President Obama, accountable for the promises he made during the US Africa Summit during his era, because those promises were not fulfilled. Let us hold them accountable for the US Africa Summit that happened last year. Those promises which were made, let us ask, where are they? Where is the money that you said that you have committed? Maybe $50 billion. You've committed, $55 billion in 3 years, and we have entered the first year now. Where is the money that you said is going to come, to the African continent? Because last week we have seen that you have committed and delivered to Ukraine $2.5 billion. So where is the money that you have delivered to Africa? If last week you just delivered $2.5 billion, of aid to Ukraine. So I think this is the attitude also as Africans which we have to adopt going forward, as these imperialists continue to move into our continent and try to bamboozle or to confuse people that they are really doing something to help, when in actual fact they are trying to find a means of exploiting further our resources. And when we go to Zambia, it is the same thing. Actually, Zambia, because they think that they have captured Zambia, this one, they even, Zambia for it, they just treat it anyhowly. And when you look at how much was committed in Zambia, through all the talks, you can even laugh and fall on the side. What they committed in Zambia is around, I think, $16 million. It's not billion, but $16 million. So they see Zambia as a country which is already in their grip. So they look at it like, whether it wants or not, it will work with us. So whether we give it or not, it will work with us. So that is the same symbolism that has continued to go around, with Kamala Harris and all the other United States, diplomats who are moving all across the continent. When you talk about people like Janet Yellen, who is a secretary of Treasury of the United States, when she came and visited South Africa, and she came, nothing. She didn't bring anything. You talk about people like Senator Blinken, the Secretary of State. They didn't bring anything, So they are just continuing to come with that rhetoric of democracy and human rights. But when you listen to our African politicians who are serious, the serious politicians on this continent, like one of the president of the Socialist Party of Zambia, when he was speaking recently in Beijing, he mentioned that these people are the ones who brutalized us. How can the same people come back? They are the same people who enslaved us and colonized us and killed our people. How can the same people come back to teach us democracy? And this speech has gone viral. So I think this is the accountability as Africans which we need, to continue to put them to, and we need to hold them, serious. Of course, they are moving into Zambia because they are seeing copper. Zambia has a lot of copper, and we are in the advent of electric cars. So they want to exploit this copper. They want to hold, to have a grip on this copper. And Zambia also is at the border with the Democratic Republic of Congo. And there's a lot of copper also in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So they are, here because they want to hold these resources. They want to have access to these resources, not to, to spread the end democracy. And we want to make this very clear to all the Africans who are watching out there, so that you can educate yourself, so that you understand. And when you understand, you get the confidence to contribute. You get the confidence also to speak up, because we don't want to be here alone speaking and saying, oh, this is happening, this is happening. We want everyone to be educated on what is happening on our continent and what is pushing these imperialists, because they are spreading the misinformation all across the continent and across the world, that they are coming with some sort of help to help Africa, in human rights and women emancipation and all this. We have not asked for any help in women emancipation. We have asked for help in infrastructure, and they are not giving us this help. So, in the whole, what we see that Kamala Harris has brought on the continent, she has brought to the continent during her trip, is the same thing that Secretary of State Anthony Blinken brought, and it is nothing. It is completely nothing that she has brought to the continent. Thank you very much, Malet. You have muted yourself. You have muted yourself.
Wow, I would have continued for the next 20 minutes. Yeah, thank you very much for that, detailed analysis on her visit the rest of the countries. uh, one of the things that hit me when you said that, of course, last time we analyzed it, even not only Ghana, but why those three countries were selected. It was not just a random visit to three countries. But you said that, okay, yeah, because of those ingredients or the raw materials to make for their technology. And also electric car. But I have read that one of the things that came out from the US, or I don't know, was it mentioned in the US Africa Summit, now that, we started to see Africa as a place for investment, and Africans, they don't see anymore now the raw materials being exported, but they are going to see the product. I mean, if you really read that or understand that between the lines, yes, we are going to see it, but are we going to own it? Are we going to use out of it? I mean, whose company is doing it? Yeah, you understand? Those are the things. I mean, these are simple questions that as an African we need to ask, but people say, oh yeah, America is going to now make investment. I mean, they are serious about it. They are sending officials after officials, but it's just nothing. Yes, we may see products but owned by who? Again, Kwame also, for our audiences, has analyzed this on a different part. You gave us an example how the Volkswagen is in Ghana. When we were, I think, analyzing the African Continental Free Trade Area right after the AU summit of 2023. Yeah, those are the things we need to pay attention. It's just nothing has changed. Raw materials being exported before, now it's the product, but still the money, the product, everything is owned by themselves. It's not really, nothing is coming to African countries. Now, one question before we wrap up this, just quickly, we have seen, for example, recently, after Blinken left Ethiopia, where he might not have been happy with some things I mean, we don't know exactly what. We just know the cover story. We have seen the report released against Ethiopia and Eritrea just right after he left. And then after he left, also Niger. Those are the two countries that he did his tour. We saw the deployment of the decision to deploy the European Union army or military, I think, beside all the African thing. Now, should we expect anything after Kamala Harris visits? Why I'm saying that, because that $100 million in the name of security, or to fight Islamists, should we expect anything? Are they trying to say now to put us at war?
Yeah, so when you look at Niger, for example, the United States has a military base over there. And what we have to understand, what I want the audience to understand is that when it comes to protecting this continent, we cannot protect only one side of the continent. That is why we always say that if you are an African, you need to be concerned about what's happening all across this continent. The United States has a military base in Niger, which is used for drones. Okay, and these drones are actually, when you look at Niger, is almost in the middle of the African continent. They are dangerous to all the African continent. We have seen what drones have done in places like Pakistan, Afghanistan. They have been using them to kill innocent people. And how have they been using them? They have been using them in the name of fighting Islamists, ISIS, Al Qaeda. This is what they have been doing. And we see that strategy, which has been in the Middle East, being shifted to Africa.
Mm-hmm.
This is where it becomes very dangerous. It becomes extremely dangerous. That is why, as an African anywhere on the continent, you need to be worried, and you need to ask questions, and you need to speak out against these puppets that are being imposed on the continent. People like Ouattara, these are absolute puppets. People like the president in Niger, these are puppets. And what we have noticed is that the imperialists, they have never ceased to work together, even when they have differences. Of course, they have differences, as we are seeing right now. Macron is in China, which we are going to talk about shortly, because he has his differences with Germany. They have differences within the European Union. They have differences even with the United States. I spoke about it here a time ago, that France wanted to sell submarines to Australia, and the United States bullied France. It bullied France and it took over the order which was supposed to go, the contract which was supposed to go to France, and the United States took it in a bullying way. It bullied France out of the way and took over the contract to supply the submarines to Australia. So they have these differences, but they still work together. They still work together when they are talking about exploiting us, when they are talking about oppressing us. That is why you see that they speak the same language. The European Union, they will be speaking the same language, pushing the same rhetoric, the same falsehood, okay, that they are talking about human rights and democracy. We know that Europe, they are the ones who came here and killed our people. Germany killed or more than 10 million people in Namibia.
Mm-hmm.
So how come that the same group of people who have killed our people and oppressed our people, colonized our people, enslaved our people, they are the same people telling us about human rights? I mean, it doesn't make sense. So they work together in oppressing us. So what we are seeing in Niger is that Niger is a full colony of the United States. That's why you see that there is drones there. Now they fear why they are collaborating, and Germany is sending troops. I think France also has sent troops in the past. I think they are sending about 60 troops. Germany is sending about 60 troops to come and train the Nigerian army, the neo-colonial army in Niger, because they are fearing that there might be a domino effect of what happened in Mali. It might happen in Niger, and the neo-colonial government which they are holding on to, which is helping them to stay in Niger, which is helping the imperialists to stay in Niger, the neo-colonial government there might be overthrown in the same way like the one in Mali and the one in Burkina Faso was overthrown. So this is why we are seeing that Germany commits troops to come to Niger, even without asking the African Union. And this is where I blame the African Union, and I blame the African heads of state. People like Museveni, who have been saying that around the 18th and 19th and the 20th century, we were enslaved and colonized because our chiefs were negligent. They didn't want to work together. But I think is the same behavior that the African heads of state today they have. How can people like President Museveni sit by, when he's accusing the chiefs of the 18th or 19th century, of betraying Africa because they didn't work together, they had internal weaknesses. When he stood by, Libya was being attacked. You see, these are still internal weaknesses. I mean, President Museveni always talks about the internal weaknesses. What are the other heads of state across the continent doing? So we are being gradually, oppressed in the same way that we were oppressed in the 16th, 17th, 19th, 18th and 19th century during slavery and colonialism, when they are still the same leaders standing by. So how can Germany send troops to Niger without the knowledge of the African Union, without the knowledge of the East African Community, without the knowledge of the ECOWAS, Economic Community of West African States, without the knowledge of SADC? All of them, they are supposed to know about this. And we are supposed to stand against the United States or Europe should not put troops on African soil without the knowledge of all of us as Africans. And this is where I want to hold, the African Union. It has to sit up and take responsibility, because you cannot say that you are the African Union, you are the chairperson of the African Union Commission, or you are the president of the, you are the chairperson of the African Union, when such events are happening on our continent, things which are very dangerous to the African people, all the African people. Events are happening that are extremely dangerous, are exposing danger to the African people, and the African heads of state are not paying attention to it. So what we are seeing in Niger is that the same imperialists, the United States and East European allies, are collaborating, and all of them are present in Niger because they are trying to protect the neo-colonial system, the neo-colonial puppets, in the continent, the sellouts, the ones who have sold out the African people. They are trying to protect them so that they will not be overthrown, like what we are seeing happened in Mali and happened in Burkina Faso, and to some extent happened in Guinea, even though in Guinea now we have doubts about what is happening in Guinea because the United States may have taken over, may have been behind the coup in Guinea. That is why we see that they are even giving in so what they are calling defense, and they are not even calling for elections in Guinea. They are not calling for elections like how they have been worrying Mali or Burkina Faso, but rather they are giving more so-called military aid for Guinea. So it becomes questionable. So the United States and its military allies, because of bauxite, because Guinea has a lot of bauxite, and of course bauxite, we know it is used making cars, of course, vehicles, and that is what is happening. So they are trying to protect that flow of material resources to the Western world, and that is what we see is happening. Thank you very much, Malid.
So, do you think that by extension, this 100 million donation, just quickly, for security reason, has to do for, like, is there any war? Should we suspect anything that these Western African countries to be put up for that $100 million in
Yeah,
exchange?
not necessarily a war, not necessarily a war, but the militarization. You can expect that the United States military is going to be present more in these areas, or is going to be financed more. That is why you are seeing that they are increasing troops, the troop presence of troops. Like Germany is committing troops. But when is Germany? Germany is committing troops just a few days ago to bring them to Niger. When Kamala Harris has announced, what she's
Ah,
calling
okay.
defense help. You see, and we know that AFRICOM, it has its headquarters in Stuttgart in Germany.
Yeah.
So this is not an accident. It is not a coincidence. So you can expect more, use of means of coercion, force, because they are seeing that the diplomacy is not working, and it is not working because they are coming with empty rhetoric. The Western world is coming to Africa with empty rhetoric, is not coming with the real investments. And the Africans are tired of this. So, because this approach of diplomacy has failed, now they want to employ force and use force. And in some cases, they want to make sure that the governments which are making the goods flow, the materials flow to the Western world are not overthrown. And so that is
Yeah.
why we see the military presence and increasing of so-called defense support and aid.
Yeah, so it's clearly a continuation of what Blinken started, that Kamala Harris is, it's all. It's just interesting, you know. Now moving to our second topic in our tonight's discussion or streaming is that the Macron and the EU chief visit to China. Now, Macron and the European Union Commission chief Ursula von der Leyen visited China just in less than a month's time after being the Chinese president or the China president was in Moscow. So in less than a month's time, the two were there. Can we say that where is the direction that EU is going? I mean, Macron is doing this in the midst of an ongoing protest in his country, which of course the live stream, the mainstream media will not stream it, will not be televised to us. But can we say that there are two options, I believe? Either EU is distancing itself from the US, or are they trying China to distance itself from Moscow?
Yeah, so thank you, Maled, for that question. So what we are seeing is there's a lot of things at play, because ongoing is the Ukraine war that we are seeing, of course, is going on, and the European Union and Europe has a lot at stake. It has a lot at stake here. Uh, Number one, the trade with China is very important to Europe. When you look at countries like France, I think they have trade with China. I think more than $100 billion. I think close to more than $100 billion. And all of Europe, China is their biggest trading partner. It overtook the United States, and so it is important for them to keep that door open, even though they are trying to antagonize. They are trying to antagonize China in one way or the other. As when we look at the speeches that have been given by the president of the European Union Commission, Ursula, von der Leyen, that she has been making, bashing comments about China, about human rights, of course, the usual hypocrisy about human rights, and now she's in Beijing. And so trade is very important, because everything is business. Everything is about economics. These wars you are seeing, all of them about economics, that they want to stay on top, controlling the world. And so it is important for Europe, even though they have the United States on the other side as the as sort of the flag bearer of now flag bearer of Western civilization and domination. But in some cases, they also have doubts. Sometimes they also have doubts and say, will this guy last? Looking at how China has become very confident and has begun solving conflicts in the Middle East, where we have lasted for a very long time. The United States has lasted in the Middle East for a very long time and has not been able to solve conflicts over there. And it has instead exacerbated the chaos and killing and people dying. So the chaos has rather increased in the Middle East. So they look at it themselves and say, we have been working with this guy who's our brother, but things are not going well, and we are seeing a new player in town. I think they themselves also, they sense it. That is why you see that Macron, during this visit, he has traveled with over 60, delegates who are business people, to go to Beijing. When we talk about the chancellor, the chancellor of Germany, he traveled with around 12 business delegates, 12 business delegates to Beijing last year. When he went to Beijing last year, Macron has gone with 60. So it shows you how serious he is when it comes to business. And so you will see him talking about Boeing. Of course, Boeing is one of the major manufacturing companies that are supplying China with aircraft, because China has just started manufacturing its own civil, aircraft. So it is not yet there, and it is already having a strained relationship with the United States. So France sees it as an opportunity, and like I told you, the United States has bullied France in the past few years. So France also sees it as an opportunity to try to overtake the United States when it comes in this area, because there are two now suppliers or manufacturers of aircraft, Boeing and Airbus. Boeing of the United States and Airbus of France. So France wants to take this opportunity also and consolidate those orders which were supposed to be given, to the United States. The orders which may go almost up to more than I think they spoke about it, and they say there are more than $500 billion of aircraft orders. So France wants to consolidate this position, and of course, and all the other industries in which they need to cooperate with China, because China now is the major manufacturing hub of the world, and the market in China is impossible for anyone to ignore. But this is not to say that their hypocrisy is not going to go on, that they are playing on one side. You remember that before President Muammar Gaddafi died, that he was in Washington shaking hands with Obama, thinking that things are well. But when he came back home, they came and attacked him. So that attitude, that hypocrisy, that hypocritical attitude of the Europeans is still there, that they can come to Beijing and talk to President Xi Jinping like that, but on the other side, they may go back to their home, especially if they don't get what they want. You saw what happened to the Secretary of State of the United States when he went to Ethiopia, that he did not get what he wants, then immediately goes and releases statements, accusing Ethiopia and Eritrea of human rights violations and so forth, and so on and so forth. So they may play the same way, that when they go to Beijing and they don't get what they want, you will hear them coming back to Brussels and start proclaiming how they care so much about human rights, about the Uyghurs and stuff like that. So this is what we are seeing, that is driving these Europeans, the desire to have a share in the Chinese market, of course, as China is growing. And of course, they see that power which China is rising with, that has been, of course, demonstrated in the Middle East, where China has brought together Iran and Saudi Arabia. And even today, actually, Saudi Arabia and Iran, again, they met in Beijing. Their ministers of foreign affairs, they met in Beijing to follow up on what was started, on the meeting and the negotiations that were started by Beijing, of course, China. And so they see the growing power of Beijing, and the influence, of course, which Beijing has on Russia, on Moscow, on President Putin. And so these are all the factors which you can think of, which are at play, that are driving them. But majorly, they want, of course, to do business. We see France, like you rightly mentioned, it has a lot of problems. More than 3 million people poured on the streets, in France, to demonstrate against Macron, because of his so-called pension reform, which he passed through, after the parliament rejected it. He passed it through with with a sort of a veto. He suspended the parliament and he passed it through. So this is what people are demonstrating against it, because he's behaving like a dictator. Okay, he's a dictator actually, because he passed it through, without the parliament. He overrode the parliament. So this is what people are demonstrating against, that you cannot say you are reforming the pension scheme without us, without our knowledge, without our agreement, because we are represented by the parliament. So if you override the parliament, then you are overriding the people and you are becoming a dictator. So this is what we are seeing, that France has a lot of problems. Germany too has a lot of problems. They are buying, all of Europe now is buying energy at 4 times, from the US, 4 times the price they were buying from Russia. So the energy bills have gone high, and the United States, of course, is making money. Its companies and corporations are making a lot of money, because it's the one selling the oil now, and the energy now to them. Yeah, so all these, are factors which are driving them. You have seen, of course, Macron, making incessant trips, back-to-back trips across the African continent also. That he was here making trips here and there. They are trying to find means of survival, because they are facing huge, economic problems, a lot of pressure. The financial systems, like in the West, they are almost collapsing. The dollar is collapsing, and people, energy bills are high. So people are complaining, and demonstrations have almost just started in Europe, and they are going to happen more. So this is what is driving, them, that they want to be hypocrites. At the same time, they want the benefit from the people they are abusing. Like they always abuse Africa, say Africans are these, Africans are that, Africans are inferior, Africans are diseased, but then they come around to beg Africa for energy resources and material resources. So this is the same behavior that we are seeing, that is sending them, is driving them to go to Beijing. They want to gain and stay in the benefit, stay benefiting from the economic miracle that is happening in China, but at the same time abusing China and insulting China. And this is what we are seeing that is driving them.
Thank you very much, Kwame. Yeah, that was it for us for today. Again, we will meet on Tuesday. That's every Tuesday and Wednesday. We are here with Kwame. Sometimes we might have another guest, might be three, but for sure, me and Kwame will be here. We select topics as he said. I mean, it's really a lot of things are unfolding in front of us, but we will try to bring, those really, we try, we take our measures what to select, and we bring it to you. So until we meet next Tuesday. That's it for us. Please, I will put those petitions that Kwame mentioned in the beginning in the comment section, and I will pin it. So please sign. And if you find this discussion relevant and that you learned something, please go and share with your friends, family, whomever you think is useful that this information is. And yeah, just continue to support us. And we try to do this. We will try to improve, meaning instead of two days a week, we try to. I mean, our aim is to do it every day, except except the weekends. But yeah, this is the case for us now, twice a week. Thank you very much, those who have been here with us. Kwame, I give you a minute or less than a minute to, yeah, just to say goodbye to the audience, and we will end it.
Yes, I just want to say thank you everyone who watched. You are listening to us. You are listening to Connect Africa. Uh, we ask you support the channel. Like Malik said, share it with others. Like the channel. and then go out there and watch all the other videos, of course, which we have made. We have a lot of presentations. They are not just videos, but rather actually lectures, which we have presented to you. Scroll through the channel and watch all of them and share them with others. And on top of that, try and support the work we are doing. Like Mallet said, once again, sign the petitions and share them with all the other people. And I told you that PLO Lumumba is in support of this enterprise that we are carrying out, this struggle which we are carrying out, and he has signed these petitions. If you scroll through the more than 700 people who have signed these petitions, the three petitions, you will see that PLO Lumumba is somewhere, in those people who have signed. So sign those petitions and spread them to all the other people. Don't only sign, but also share them with other people, because we are onto something really big here, as we are seeing the world changing at a very rapid rate. Thank you so much, and have a good night. Good day to you all. Good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you very much.
All right. So yeah, bye. Bye, Kwame also.